It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Wednesday, July 24th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Health is Happiness, the Evangelism Scripts Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? And yes, it's a wonderful Wednesday. We have hit midweek. Hope you guys have had a good week thus far. Don't forget, every Thursday, which is tomorrow, we will be having question and answer. So get those questions ready. Send them to me whenever you can. It could be about 30 lessons. It could be about church stuff. It could just be questions that you're thinking about the Bible. Everything is open game. The one thing I cannot guarantee is that I know the answer to every question. But if you have those questions, go ahead, send them to me whenever you can. You can DM me, put it into the comment section too. All right. And if you haven't yet, for today's video, please leave a like and comment to build our community. I am super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. Now, this week's Sunday message title is Open the Eyes of Perception and Look. So I am very happy and very excited about this too. For me, it's not just the middle of the week. We have exactly 1 week before July ends. So by the time we hit next Wednesday, I think it's going to be next Wednesday, we're going to be in August. That is too crazy for me that we're already hitting August. And, you know, one thing we do know about August in Korea is a time for the retreats. So I think there's going to be a ton of events happening in Warmingdong. I am super grateful and thankful that we can all be part of this history. And hopefully, if there's any of you guys out there that can make it to the retreats, I would love to hear how the retreats are going. You can maybe talk about what you see, the people you met, the message Sunseam gives. And for myself, one of the biggest curiosities that I have for this year's retreats is, what's the theme going to be? I'm really curious, what is the theme going to be for the retreats this year, right? And my hunch is, just from this week's, I'm just going by this week's message. My hunch is, because Sunseam did talk about the retreats this week in this week's message. So my hunch, just my feeling is that Sunseam's going to be reminding us of how great the history we're in, reteaching a lot of the doctrines and how great the doctrines are so that everyone will have the doctrines and such embedded in our hearts. I find something very interesting when it comes to all the stuff Sunseam is teaching nowadays, spiritual resurrection, about Jesus coming back in spirit and such. I look at that and I find that super interesting because it doesn't matter who you are. If you stop teaching or if you stop being deeply involved in this history, eventually you're going to forget. You're not going to remember all the things that Sunseam talked about in the past. And these are things that, while we were lecturing, while we were leading, while we were running for this history, these are things that we knew inside out, right? Everything we knew about it. But now, if you stay away from it too long, just like me in Bible verses, I memorized so many Bible verses, but in the end, what happens? Even though I've memorized so many Bible verses, if I stop teaching, I'm going to forget where those Bible verses are, right? I was probably around 300 or so Bible verses, and these were all related to the 30 lessons. So which means when I'm teaching a lesson, I would never use the Bible ever. I would just spit it out. You know what I mean? So I think it's something that we do have to, I think it's good that Sunseam continually reminds us of these things too. But I am very much looking forward to the retreats. I can't go myself because it is official now. I will be in the U.S. at that time helping with evangelism. So I am looking forward to that. Pretty excited about that too. So please let me know. If you're going to go to the retreats in August, let me know how it's going. You can be like someone who's a reporter out there. Just kind of tell the audience how things are going over there too. I would love to hear how the retreats are going this year. Like I said, my trip is official. I will be leaving to the U.S. In the middle of August, which is, 3.5 weeks away. So it's very, very close. And I'm very much looking forward to it, to get my feet back on the ground. Getting the boots back on the ground, going on campus and meeting people, stuff like that too. One of our segments, it's an old but newer segment. It's Love and Life. There's Aaron and Chelsea out there. They're doing that segment on the life of a blessed family. And they're brand new too. They haven't been married for very long. They've had a new baby boy. Very excited about that too. About that too. And that last episode it's something that people want to talk about. Should I be worried about the blessing? And that one just blew up. It really blew up. And the last episode was their best episode in terms of viewers watching, people that are connecting through the comment section and stuff like that too. So that is something that I am looking, I like these types of programmings because it hits different targets and different audiences. And that one definitely hits people who are preparing for blessing, or they are people who are blessed families who kind of relate more to the topics that they talk about. So if you guys have any other segments that you want to talk about, I would love to hear it too. I think one type of segment I would love to hear is about business. That's the one I want to hear about, is having faith in the business world. And it's going to, someone who's in business can talk about the businesses that they're doing, or talk about how faith integrates into business, stuff like that also. Like, that's something I would be kind of coolly interested in about it too. But I have some exciting news though. I do have exciting news, which is there will be a new segment. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it separate or part of the actual the podcast that I do, but it's going to be on praise and music education. So I am super excited about that. Later I'll tell you guys who is the one actually doing it, but it's not going to be coming out until September. So I'll let you guys know a little bit more as time gets closer and closer to it. So I know many people are looking forward to praise education and stuff like that also. Okay, so Love and Life doing very, very well. They're giving great insight, and I like it because they give insight on things that I simply cannot give. Going through the blessing, talking about their life of marriage, having a child, the things that they go through. And I'm very thankful that they have started this segment for Love and Life, and also looking forward to hearing about the love and life of Aaron and Chelsea too, as they're raising a family in this history. So very, very interesting and cool. I have a couple of thoughts that I was thinking about, as I talk to more and more people from different countries and such. One of the topics I do talk about a lot, and the most probably, is basically leadership. And one of the questions that came out is, we were talking about leadership styles, right? Or leadership ways that people lead. And we had a couple of interesting thoughts on leadership and what would make people more effective leaders, or what would make people really want to follow them. You know what I mean? So haven't you ever had it where there's like people who you're like, what the heck? Why are people following this person? They don't have any qualifications or this or that. They don't have a title. They don't have this or that. But people still follow them or respect them or listen to them more than they actually listen to their own head leader, right? And you're like, that doesn't really make sense, does it? And I think this is one of the things that leaders try to figure out is how, if you are the leader, which is, you imagine you're the leader of a church, leader of a department, leader of anything, right? How do you get people to genuinely follow you? And I think this is not an easy thing to do, because all the advice and all the advice and the techniques we have to do this are very counterintuitive, right? They're so opposite of what we think we should be doing, right? And I think one of the biggest, when people don't know how to lead, what they use is their authority and power to make people do things or make people follow them. Oh, I'm that leader, or I'm this, or I'm that, so you need to follow me this, and this, right? And they're not going to understand, why aren't they listening to me? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that, right? And, a lot of times it's too based on power and authority. Do this. You cannot do this. You cannot do this. And that's kind of one of the things that people hate. People hate it when people tell them, don't do this. It's just kind of a natural thing we've had since we were young, right? We're an adult, we're mature. How can you tell us that we can or cannot do this or that, right? And I would say that that is more of a type of leadership that works well in a situation where there is absolute authority, kind of like the military. In the military, it just goes by rank. And everyone knows that there is a way to get up the ranks, and they're highly respected because they put in the work. They did a lot of great things, and that's why they became a leader, right? And it's interesting because a lot of the times you're going to find that there are more reasons not to follow someone than there are to, right? So, what are some of the, I'm not going to say it's older or archaic methods because they're still used today in situations like the military, right? And I would say that it was more like that in the past, and it's more of an Asian style. I'm going to say that is I would say it's more of an Asian style that because of authority, because they're older, because they have a title, they're highly respected, and you kind of listen to everything they say. Like, even in Korea when I was there, I'm not sure how big it is in other Asian countries, but I know it's just when I was living there, I had a very hard time with listen to me because I'm older than you. Like, for me, that was like, no, I'm not going to listen to you just because you're older than me. You know what I mean? Like, and this has nothing to do with being a rebel. This is more of just the West and the East clashing with each other, right? It's more about their authority. It's more about the title and such, which is a cultural thing. It's more of respecting your elders, respecting the ones who got the titles and stuff too. And I would say that because of that mix and clash that we see, that's why there's always going to be some type of misunderstandings and such. Now, what I would say today is we see that everything is kind of more mixing together. So even the Asian style leadership is becoming more Western. And it's kind of mixing in. It's kind of turning into a better style of leadership too. And I think it's very, very difficult for people who haven't learned the skills of leadership to understand how to do this, right? There's always a better leadership style, always. The West isn't the best and the East isn't the best. There's always a way in the middle. Like, for instance, even when Sunsi was talking about politics, when Sunsi talks about, the answer is definitely not communism. Better than communism is democratic, right? However, Sunsim also says even the democratic way is not the best. It's somewhere that has bits and pieces of both the democratic and the communist style put together. There's like a better style of doing it because there's pros and cons to both sides, right? So there is always a better leadership style. And there's some things that I research and some things I look into and through experience too that I think that will help us. And when I say experience, not saying that I'm a good leader. I'm just saying that I've probably made a lot of mistakes. And because of those mistakes, I can see like, I can see why this is much better. So one of the big ones I think that that leaders or all of us in general, even if we're leading just a small group, if we're leading a team or a group or whatever, a division, whatever it is, right? Whatever we're leading, one of the things is, a lot of times leaders have to make hard decisions. And it almost feels unfair because it's a hard decision and people are going to complain no matter what. And one of the things it says is communication has to be clear why you made that decision. Now, what does that mean? So when you have these bigger decisions, a little bit more controversial, it's something that many people are going to complain about or misunderstand, which means that you should have clarity in your decision. The decision process, people should know clearly why you made that decision. And when someone asks, hey, why did you make that decision? The leader shouldn't brush it off or give some general answer. It should be done clearly. Yes, it was a ruthless decision. It is something that is a very difficult decision. But it was done with a clear guideline and method so that everyone at least understands why the decision was made. And this is one thing that people really appreciate is, hey, I made this decision because of this. I looked at this, I looked at this, I looked at this, I looked at this. And I weighed this one a lot higher than this one here, right? And, this is why sometimes people complain is not because the leaders made a bad decision. It's because the communication it's not clear why they made that decision. So it looks like it's just a play on authority, like I made the decision because I'm the leader kind of thing, right? But if it's very clear, then people say, okay, well, I may not agree with it, but thank you for telling me exactly how you came up with this decision, right? And it's we don't want to have people having that feeling like, man, this person just chose it because they like this person better, or they just they're just choosing it because it benefits them, or whatever it is, right? People need a clear idea, very clear, of why you made that decision. It's part of transparency, right? So that's one way I would say that helps people to understand very, very difficult decisions that we do make, right? Second thing, I do think leaders too do fall into this sometimes, I myself included, is sometimes we become too emotional about something. Like, I've heard leaders getting upset and angry when they hear a report. And I'd be like, why would you be upset by a report? Even if it's bad news. Because that for me is not a clear or level-headed leader. If you hear a report, and it makes you upset to the point you get angry, I would say it's best not to make any decisions or have any thoughts on it. Why? Why would a report make you angry? How do you know that report is correct? How do you know that report is something that is told in an unbiased way? I've said this before, especially when it looks like, when I see people in like every church or every country has their complaints department, right? When you hear a complaint, do you react right away, or should you talk to both sides and get the right information that is unbiased? You're going to hear one side, hear the other side, and you start to put it together, right? Or are you in the thinking that one-sided reporting is always correct? Do you know what I mean? Like, one thing that I find when it comes to reporting to Sunsteam, this is the thing that drives Sunsteam up the wall, is when someone reports to Sunsteam, Sunsteam is assuming that this person has heard both sides. They heard both sides. They're understanding it much better, and then they give a report to Sunsteam. And Sunsteam's kind of under that, like, oh, this is what I'm thinking, okay? And then he can make a judgment based on one side. The problem that happens is when people report only one side, Sunsteam makes a decision on that one-sided report, and then later, all of a sudden these letters keep coming in that, no, Sunsteam, that's not actually what happened. And so that makes Sunsteam like, hey, isn't that your responsibility to check both sides? Like, I've had that happen to me multiple times. Right? Multiple times where it's like, no one talked to me, but they just report. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because then this will make people think that the leader is choosing sides, that they only listen to one side and not the other. Then they made a judgment based on that one side, right? And I would say that would be an improper way. And a lot of times it's because we're human, we get emotional, but my advice would be not to make decisions while you're in that emotional state, right? And I've seen it. Leaders hear one report, they get angry. And for me, it doesn't really make sense. But I also look at myself and like, there have been reports that I have seen the same, I have done the same thing too. So this is something that's part of my experience also. The third thing that I would say that helps in leadership style so that people will genuinely follow you is basically don't tell people what to do. That's not what a leader does. A leader's not there to tell people how to do it, how to live. It may work on children because children are looking up to the adults to figure out how to live, how to do things. But eventually, halfway through campus, you should be an adult. Like, I've seen leaders treat people in campus who are third and fourth year getting ready to become career department members, and they're still treated like children. You can't do this, you can't go there, you can't do this, you can't do that, right? But eventually it doesn't work on adults. Eventually adults, they get tired of it. People talking to them like they're little children, right? Like, for you guys too, can't you tell when someone is talking to you like you're an adult or a child? You could tell the difference. It's like condescending, or they talk like they know better than you, or they know your life better than you do. And I think it's pretty easy to feel the difference when someone is talking down at you and someone is talking with you, right? Or discussing with you. And this kind of goes into my first point is, the more you use your authority to control people, the more the people don't want to follow you. The authority is not the way, right? There is a huge difference between a leader that uses their authority to make people do something and a leader that people follow because they truly respect them. Completely different. And I think it's something that we do need to think about and reflect upon. What is the leadership like in our churches? What is the leadership like in our countries? What is the leadership like in Providence? And we do know that ultimately in the end, who is perfect? Leaders are going to make mistakes. And that's why now put it this way, if your leader was absolutely perfect, then that would be something like, oh, this person is absolutely perfect. They are connected to God 100%. They fully do their responsibility 100%. So then at that point, if you knew that, like if it was like, think about it, if it was God talking to you, do you need to question it? You'd be like, no, this is God. He knows what he's talking about, kind of thing, right? But one of the reasons why we kind of go or rebel against authority is when someone who is not perfect acts like they are, like they know all the answers. And that's where problems come in there too. And that's when a lack of respect comes in. And, I think this is something that we do need to think about and understand about ourselves and understand about leadership too. Is this is not about bashing leadership. This is about us helping to understand ourselves really well, understanding each other. And as we understand and know each other much better and know ourselves and others much better, sometimes we become more forgiving or more sympathetic because we realize, this person may not know that they're doing this. This person may not be trained in this area. Or we understand that in our country, we don't even have a leadership training program. So how can they know this better? Do you know what I mean? So this is something that is not a one-sided thing like, oh, they're wrong for doing this. This is more of helping us to understand both sides. So in the end, we can help each other to do it much better too. I also had another good conversation with another leader about, how churches do events and stuff like that too. And it was really interesting because, one thing that is factual is usually a small amount of people do most of the work. And I'm not saying this is bad. This is normal. In almost every organization, this is normal, right? So you're going to see like, okay, so we have this going on. Like, it's true. There's people that run full time. They have more time. They're able to run these events and stuff like that too. And that's something I have no problem with because that's normal. But I do think that Providence in general, just in general, I don't think we've reached we haven't reached an ideal state of how our church is. Now, what does that mean? So the conversation was like, what kind of situation would be ideal for you that if let's just say that you're in charge of some type of event and you opened it up and you'd say, hey, can we get some help here? What would be the most ideal situation for you that you wanted to be in, right? Is it ideal to be in a situation where no one wants to help, even if they had time? Or people kind of look down on the event and say that, oh, this is so meaningless. You know what I mean? Like, is that considered the ideal situation? What is the most ideal situation a Providence church should be in or a country should be in? Now, first thing I want to say is I'm not saying that people should neglect their families or work or school. That's something they should not do, right? They should be focusing on those things. However, it's like this week's message. The complete Testament history is different than the New Testament. We're different. We are not there just to focus on our families, just to focus on our careers or school, right? That's how the physical world lives. They just go and do their responsibility. But listening to this week's message, we're still the people that put God first and loving God more than anything else. And we are the ones that need to fulfill the will of God. Do you think that God intended us to get blessed or go to a nice job to only do those things and nothing else until we die? and not help God's history, not doing it, is that the ideal marriage or career? And the answer is obviously no. There is an ideal state our churches need to get to where people have that faith. People have that hope in this history that they know that whatever we do, succeed or fail, it is setting a condition to go towards fulfilling what God truly wants in this time period. Even if we have a family, even if we have a great career, even if we're going to some schooling, whatever it is, as people of this history, there is the fundamental understanding that we are here to fulfill God's will. There is a bigger reason for things, right? Like for instance, remember I told you guys before, one of the big things that I saw, I was like, man, I want to be rich enough to have a private plane. And people were like, but then here's the thing. If someone just says, I want to be rich enough to have a private plane, we're going to be sitting there like going, oh man, this guy's just so focused on the physical things. Yeah, like this, just like any other CEO, this, and this, they have a private plane. But then for us in this history, the why should be so much bigger, that God should be number one. And I talked about this before and I said, hey, put it this way. The reason for a private plane is what? Is because the time is more valuable for that person, right? That they don't have to go 3 hours early to the airport, sit in line, and then they have to follow the schedule of the plane. If there's a one stop, a layover, whatever it is. But if having a private plane is about time, it'd be like, no, the person who has the most valuable time is Sunsim, and he needs it more than anyone else, especially at this stage in his life where he's already 80 years old. Who needs it more than him? Where he doesn't have paparazzi, doesn't have people coming up to him in the airport, or there could be some dangers or whatever it is. And I would sit there and say, no, Sunsim, if there's anything else, and someone says, why do you want a private plane? It's like, why? Because Sunsim needs it. That's a different vision, way different vision. Why do you want to be a doctor? Why do you want to be a lawyer? Why do you want a family? Why do you want 5 kids? Why do you want, there's got to be a greater vision than just, I need to make money, or I want to provide for my family, or I just want to have more status. I think that's a problem. And as brides of this history, the ideal state we're trying to reach is the number one thing that we think about is God in this history. There's nothing greater than this. And if you think about it, if God's supposed to be your number one priority over all things, God becomes the priority over your family, your job, your friends, whatever it is. Now, like I said, I'm not saying neglect these things, because God wants us, part of our duty is to take care of these things too, right? But the overall vision, the why behind it, should be about God in this history. And I'm not talking about people who don't have time. Right? I understand that. But I know that if we get to a point where when people have time, they can help, that is a completely different story. Completely different. Right? What can I do as a career member, or this or that? Like one thing I really enjoy, and like I see it in like different countries, Malaysia, and also that are big enough, like Malaysia, you look at Korea, Taiwan, Japan. For instance, they have doctors, and doctors will, I remember when I was in Korea too, there'll be like doctors all come into one church and they do a free clinic, and people who need help, they'll do it for a very cheap price, this and that, right? And I'm like, wow, that is awesome, right? And there are a number of ways that we're able to help our churches or help this history. And there are a number of ways. The sad part is if we're making God's history, and even when people have time, they're like, it's not worth it, right? And I would say to most people is, when we reach that ideal state, people find any way to help. And if they don't have enough time, they'll find another way. Some people will donate financially, whatever it is, right? It's like encouraging those who are, like even encouragement. Encourage those that are running. Even a small gesture like encouragement, buying them a drink, small gift, whatever it is, that is all support. Even if you cannot go out to support the event or whatever it is, you're always looking for a way to support because you believe in this history. praying for the event, being positive about it, talking to others to help them to go, buying someone else a ticket if they can't go. There are many things that you can do, right? And would you say, honestly, right now we're in the ideal state? And obviously we'd say no. If we even look at ourselves, we're not in the ideal state yet. But I think the more important question that we should think about is, how do we get the churches to that ideal state? How? How do we help everyone to rise above their situation right now, to realize how great this history is? Kind of the same thing what Sunseem's doing right now, right? Through the Word, he's helping us to understand this history much better, and he's going over the things that we should know. And, Sunseem's even so obvious. He's spelling it out. Hey, why am I repeating? I'm repeating it so that it's instilled in your head, and for the new people too. You need to know. How do we get to that level? That people are genuinely focused on God in this history, genuinely caring about what happens in God's history. They really want to see it grow. They become a part of it. They begin to sacrifice for it. And I think that's something we really need to figure out. And in most cases, people just understand that this is this, I think what I find is it's hard because sometimes we know that this situation, people don't want to help, people don't want to do this, people don't want to come to service or whatever it is. We just know that's the situation. And all we do is we kind of ignore it and we move forward with no answer or no way to help it. And this is kind of a level of apathy, right? And it eventually makes the problem grow more and more to a point where you have no choice but to address it because it's that serious, right? And I think that's like kind of what I said last week when it comes to change. Change happens in three ways. It's either deliberate, accidental, or forced. And when is the best time to do it? It's when it's deliberate. Well, sometimes accidental is nice because everything just fits in where God is working. But a lot of times if it gets to the point of force, this is where a lot of people get hurt and a lot of people don't like it, but they have no choice kind of thing, right? So that is something that I was talking with someone else about. And I thought it was a really, really interesting subject because even if we know that this is a situation, what are we doing to make it better? What can we do to make it better? Right? And that is something I do think that we have to think about at that level too. Either way. All right. So there it is, guys. That is kind of my segment number one. Hope it's something that made you guys think more deeply. A lot of brain food to digest and chew on your drive to work or school or whatever it is. But I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Have any comments or questions about this? Go ahead, leave in the comments below. We'd love to hear from that. Okay. So before we get into the evangelism scripts, let's get into the first music break of the day. All right, so let's get into today's evangelism scripts word study. And there is something that I think that we can use as a very, very good introduction as we go out to evangelize. And it's going to, one of the things that I do agree with is that when you meet with people, sometimes people don't have questions because they're not thinking about it. They're not thinking about the Bible. They're not thinking about, oh, this doesn't make sense. They just kind of live their life of faith. And because their faith is not like a massive part of their life, they just kind of do what they feel is best. And they only know Christianity to their level. And I would say is sometimes you need to be the one that gives them the question and the answer. For instance, when I meet with someone, one of the questions that comes up is, I'll tell them is like, this is a question that I get a lot. And I'll tell the people like, yeah, this is a question I get a lot is Christians just kind of believe in an oversimplified way, which is if you believe in Jesus, you go to heaven. If you don't, it goes to hell. That's it, right? And it's really interesting because when you oversimplify something, there are too many questions because it sounds like someone who's a murderer and a rapist, and they come to believe in Jesus, then they're forgiven, they go to heaven. And on the flip side, even if you're a really, really good person, but you don't believe in Jesus, then you just end up in hell. And that's kind of how oversimplification comes in. Because we have tons of questions like, what about those who never heard the gospel? Right? Did they go to hell then because they never heard? What about those who had other religions and they were living a good life? Were they kind of saved to a certain level or just because they couldn't believe? So when we talk about heaven and hell, one of the ones I do talk about and I would open up to people is the concept of salvation for two types of people that you guys can look at is people who are Gentiles. So they're probably people who don't believe, but they're maybe even believing in another religion, right? And the best example we can use for people who are Gentiles would be those that were judged at the time of Noah, right? And then you'll see like in Genesis chapters, you can read all the way chapter 6 through 9, it talks about the flood that symbolizes a judgment of conscience and justice that we know about this. So where did they go after they died? Did they go to hell? And where did Noah, who was physically saved, go to? If he was saved because of his righteousness and went to heaven, it actually contradicts Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Well, what does that mean? What do you mean it contradicts Jesus? Well, we know that in John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. But if Noah goes to heaven because he was righteous, it means he didn't need Jesus. It contradicts the Bible that the only way is through Jesus. But now we're saying, oh, no, it's more than just Jesus. It doesn't make any sense. So one of the things that we do talk about, great verse that we use all the time, is 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 18 through 21. And it basically says that, we know this one, especially in verse 19 and 20, that Jesus went to preach to the spirits in prison who disobeyed at the time of Noah. So these are Gentiles, right? These are people who were born and died before Jesus did, right? So we look at it as like, oh, that's quite interesting. And Jesus actually preached to them in the spiritual world. And the one thing we absolutely know for sure is that once someone goes to hell, can you ever get out? And the answer is no. So if Jesus was preaching to the people in the spiritual prisons, what would be the point if that was actually hell? It makes no sense. So by looking at the case of those people who were judged at Noah's time, you can easily see that people from Adam to John the Baptist were imprisoned and they were not put in hell, right? They were caught in a spiritual world that is fair for their time, right? So you got to think, this is one of those great questions that you can bring up, and then people will be like, oh, I never thought about that. And this will make them think more deeply, where you have two choices. Number one is you can stop without giving an answer and say, hey, we got a Bible study that answers this question, right? And that's really, really interesting. So that would make people say, oh, that's so cool. I want to learn about this, right? And you can give a bunch of examples in the Old Testament of people who had relatively not much knowledge of God, but they were accepted by God. For instance, there was a prostitute named Rahab, and you could find this in the story of Joshua chapter 2 and Hebrews chapter 11. It talks about Rahab the prostitute, smallest amount of knowledge about God, but the Bible refers to her as a woman of faith. Naaman, I talked about him a couple weeks ago. Naaman the Syrian was a Gentile, granted peace with God because he exercised faith even though he was living in the midst of a pagan culture. You had Jonah was sent to Nineveh, which is where? Is not even in Israel. Nineveh is a place considered a heathen pagan culture, a heathen society, right? And they repented at Jonah's preaching. So if you look at these three examples, it can be seen that God will judge all humankind fairly and that no one can claim they received an unfair hearing. Right? A big verse that we can use to, like these are a bunch of different ideas I'm giving you. Romans chapter 2, verse 14, 15 talks about the judgment of conscience, and it talks about Gentiles. Romans 2, 14, 15 is a classic. When Gentiles who do not have the law do by nature things required by the law, they are a law for themselves, even though they do not have the law. Since they show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts now accusing, now even defending them. Paul talks about the judgment of conscience, right? The conscience tells us whether we are doing right or wrong. And conscience is basically the start of all religions. Right? Even unbelievers of Jesus in the New Testament were saved to a certain point by their conscience, right? So, we have to understand that that what we can teach people is take small bits and pieces of the word that we're hearing and help people to understand it at a much higher level. Why? Because as 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 3 and 4 tells us, God wants all men to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. If he didn't want everyone to come to God, then what's the point of giving everyone a chance? He just picks the people that he wants and it's done. Right? And this is why we have to understand salvation at that level for Gentiles and for those who've never heard the gospel, right? When you think about people who've never heard the gospel, what does that mean, right? What does it mean that we have salvation for those who have never heard the gospel? When you think about this, there's a couple verses in Romans chapter 2, verse 12, I believe, Romans 5:13, Romans chapter 7, verse 8, that talks about people have to hear the gospel first before they're judged, right? They have to hear it first. And it's something that we do need to understand. It's something that has to be, that God is that fair and wanting every person to be saved, right? And I would say that, we have to understand, like, one thing I do think that's really important is, if you look at the lessons, like just say the 30 lessons, you could break down every lesson and take out like 5 to 10 different pieces of it and use it as one of those, isn't this interesting? Oh, I never thought about this. Oh, what does this mean, right? And that is something I do think that we can understand at we can help people to at least open their eyes a little bit to the word. And you have the choice of teaching them on the spot or giving them the problem and saying our next lesson is to give them the answer to that question, right? And I think that's something that's a great way to attract people to the word. It is a good way, right? So this is like with these evangelism scripts, I think these are great ways to help people who are doing direct evangelism on campus. These scripts are great for it. And I think eventually, like for me going to the U.S., we got to try something new for the main source of evangelism where we can have tons and tons of people coming into this history. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's going to require us to use different technologies and different methods in order for us to make this work in a better way. So these are a couple of the other ideas I was thinking about that can help people to go help evangelize on campus too. All right. So there it is, guys. That is today's Evangelism Scripts word study. Hope it's something that you guys really enjoy. If you have any questions, go ahead, put them down low. If you have any special situations or special cases of people who need some type of evangelism script for them, you can write it in the comments or DM me privately, and we can definitely talk about it too. All right. So there it is, guys. That is today's Evangelism Scripts word study. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We do have Health is Happiness next. So before that, let's get into the final music break of the day.
I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. We stay looking for someone to hold when the right one's standing at your door. Open up your heart and say, I believe in what you say, and I promise you will gain much more. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. 10 years of struggle, 10 years of pain, but I'll finally get to see you no more. Just calling your name, and the ones who wonder who, just open up your eyes. He's waiting for you too. He's not a man in disguise. And the hardest cross to bear, but your heart's not what I wear. To think this effort and this love could overcome the dirty stairs, and it's all because of you. Yeah, it's all because of you. Said it's all because of you. Yeah, I need you. Looking for someone to hold when the right one's standing at your door. Open up your heart and say, I believe in what you say, and I promise you will gain much more. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one.
Okay, so let's get into our final segment for today's Wednesday podcast. And of course, every Wednesday we do have the Health is Happiness segment. Last week we talked about strength training. And this week on Health is Happiness, we're going to go into cardio training and the importance of it too. So without further ado, all the way over there from Singapore, this is Yin Yu with Health is Happiness.
Hello everyone, my name is Yuan Yu and I'm from Singapore. I'm currently studying in my final year of physiotherapy. On today's topic, I'll be explaining about cardio training. In order to have a physically active lifestyle, there are 3 very important aspects. Number 1, strength exercises to improve muscular fitness. Number 2, cardio or aerobic exercises to improve cardio fitness, also known as heart fitness. Number 3, reducing sedentary activity. Today, I will emphasize more on cardio exercises. I find that this timing of the recording of this episode is really apt as I'm currently on a cardiac placement where I teach patients after going for heart surgery how it's like to get back to walking and their daily life. Firstly, why cardio? Our physical fitness can be categorized into various aspects, such as body composition, flexibility, muscular strength, muscular endurance, and cardiorespiratory endurance. For cardio exercises, it mainly improves our health in the cardiorespiratory endurance aspect, where the heart becomes more efficient in pumping blood. It also improves our health in the body composition category because cardio exercises improves fat burning. The above two further lead to more health benefits such as improved mood, stronger immune system. And these benefits also apply to those with health conditions such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, mental health, older people, or even during pregnancy. However, the parameters as to how much and how long to do it for would differ for each individual, and one can seek medical advice. Second, what is cardio exercise? It is repetitive, structured physical activity that requires the body's metabolic system to use oxygen to produce energy. For an exercise to be considered cardio, it involves raising your heart rate to a moderate or vigorous intensity. Hence, strength training is not considered cardio exercise as it doesn't raise the heart rate for extended periods of time. Some examples of cardio exercise include walking, jogging, cycling, swimming, hiking, climbing steps, rowing machines. HIIT, which stands for HIIT, high intensity interval training, and one can also join church sport activities if your church has any. HIIT may not be, or with regards to HIIT may not be as enjoyable to some as it involves a higher intensity exercise at a shorter duration. However, it is also a good form of cardio exercise. I think one thing good about cardio exercises is that it can also be done in various places, such as your home, around your residence, in the park, etc. Also, another way to categorize cardio exercises is how high or low the impact is. High impact exercises involves having both of your feet off the ground at some point in time. For instance, jump rope, running. Whereas a low impact activity involves one foot remaining on the ground at all times. For example, walking and hiking, of which it also includes exercises in the water, such as swimming or aquatic exercises. And another low-impact exercise is cycling because the bicycle supports most of your body weight. What is the significance of all of this? Well, impact exercises do promote your bones to grow stronger. And if you find it painful on your joints when you exercise, or you have existing arthritic conditions, for example osteoarthritis, then doing something of a lower impact would be more suitable. Although a higher impact exercise would promote more bone growth, we do not want to do too much too fast. Therefore, a lower impact exercise would be better to start with and then gradually moving on to something with higher impact. Now, how can one do your own cardio exercise training? According to the ACSM guidelines, the American College of Sports Medicine guidelines, healthy adults should aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity weekly, or an equivalent combination of moderate and vigorous activity. For those who have not been exercising, then a light to moderate intensity exercise may be beneficial. One example of all of this can be brisk walking or jogging for 30 minutes for 5 days a week, of which this 30-minute exercise can be done in short blocks of 10 minutes times 3 times a day. However, regardless of all of this, as a baseline, any activity is better than none. Do note that when you're doing cardio exercise, should you feel excessive tiredness, excessive breathlessness, chest pain, or cold sweat, do stop. take a rest, and seek medical attention, especially if these symptoms persist. Then as you are doing your cardio exercise, when can you progress? At the same intensity of the workout, if you feel less tired and find it more manageable for at least 1 to 2 consecutive sessions, then do progress it. And how to progress? You can either make it longer or you can make it harder by increasing the intensity. Here is one example of a cardio program. I will split them briefly into easy, intermediate, and advanced. So for instance, for easy, it can be walking, jogging on the spot, air jump rope, meaning that you jump without a rope and with an imaginary rope, and jumping jacks. Intermediate would be something like jogging, jumping rope with an actual jump rope, climbing stairs, cycling. And advanced would be running, jump squats, burpees, jump lunges, etc. When you start, do have a warm-up of at least 5 to 10 minutes. It can consist of dynamic stretches or an easier version of what your exercise is. For instance, if you're going to jog, then for your warm-up, you can jog at a slower pace or brisk walk. Warm-up is important because just like how you need to start a car before you drive it, if you don't warm up, then you're more likely to get injured. Also, warming up helps to prepare your body to do something more difficult. If you find that you don't warm up versus you warm up, you'll be able to do a longer and higher intensity exercise if you warm up. Then you can move on to the actual exercise where you want to aim for a moderate intensity or a vigorous intensity. And how to gauge, you can use the rate of perceived exertion scale, the RPE scale. You want to aim for something that is difficult on a scale that you can rate on a scale of 0 to 10, where 4 to 6 would be moderate and vigorous would be 7 to 8 out of 10. Then another way that you can tell how difficult the activity is called the talk test. If during the activity you can complete sentences without any problem, then it is an easy intensity exercise. If you're able to speak but not complete sentences, then that is intermediate or moderate. And if you can only speak a few words, then that is vigorous intensity. Afterwards, do also have a cool down of 5 to 10 minutes, and this can be in the form of an easier version than what you were doing. For instance, if you ran or if you jog, then jog at a slower pace or brisk walk as cool down. Cool down is equally important too, because it allows your heart to go back to where it was previously when you were at rest. During exercise, the heart pumps out to 25 liters of blood a minute, and the muscles are delivering 25 liters of blood back to the heart by squeezing the blood up your veins. I stop suddenly, then the heart keeps on pumping blood out, but the return of blood from your muscles cut or are suddenly stopped because the muscles stop contracting as much. The heart therefore cannot pump out what it does not receive. Therefore, blood pressure drops rapidly and one might feel like fainting. Hence, it's important not to stop suddenly, but instead continue moving for a few minutes to allow the heart rate and your heart to gradually go back to where it was at rest. In addition, one might also choose to do an exercise test to keep track of your progress. Meaning that if let's say you have a goal in terms of walking or in terms of jogging, then you can see how long you take to walk a certain distance or to run a certain distance, and then track your progress over time by doing another exercise test after 6 to 8 weeks or the duration that you want to train for, and doing it again at the end to see how much you have improved. Now, before I end, I will share some proverbs on exercise. From August 2021, it says, if you exercise even a little, you will not lose the sense of playing and your body will not become stiff and rigid. If you sleep even a little, you will not collapse. Even if it's a little, you must do it. Do not forget this word and keep on doing it. From March 2021, it also talks about Even though it is difficult, if you take care of your well-being and exercise every day, you will receive the grace of healing. Some sickness cannot be dealt with only through prayer, but needs to be healed by exercise. You have to do the exercise that pertains to it. And lastly, from this year's July 2023 Proverbs, it talks about you have to learn about exercise, then it will be fun and you can do it for a long time. In the same way, you have to learn about prayer so that it can be done meaningfully and last for a long time without getting boring. You must surely learn. Truly, through taking action and doing things and getting better at it, we will be able to find better ways that are more enjoyable. Personally, for myself, through running and training and track and field, one thing that definitely I've been able to see is that through training, the things that were once difficult became easy. For instance, a 20-minute jog that was once difficult for me, but through years, a 20-minute jog has become my warm-up for a 1-hour-long run. Also, through doing things consistently, I've seen that can surely allow you to break through to the next level. Because during the past few years of training, there have been many periods where I felt stagnant. But as long as I committed to it, as long as I did the training and trusted the training program that my coach has had for me, I was able to break through and get faster and get stronger over time. In the same way, let us all strive to develop ourselves both physically and spiritually. Take care, everyone, and we'll meet all of you during another episode. Goodbye.
And thank you so much, Yin for another wonderful episode of Health is Happiness. Today we talked about cardio training. And yes, for myself, I hate cardio training, but I love sports. So when I play sports, I don't feel that it's cardio. So I think I'm going to get more into that. I'm going to try my best to do more into that. Either way. So there it is, guys. That is this week's Health is Happiness. Hope you guys super awesome enjoyed it. Have a wonderful and awesome Wednesday service tonight. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when